Okay, so we are live on YouTube right now for the second presentation of the day for the regional week presented by VECA. This is Ontario Day, so welcome to all our Ontario members and non-members, also people from other parts of the country I can see. So today it's a presentation we did in other regions too, but I guess, this time is going to be catered a little bit towards more Ontario. So we encourage you to ask questions. So this morning you're gonna touch on the roadmap update and building code public review update. So I'll let you start with that after I thank VECA and Everlast as sponsors.
Great, thank you.
So so I think you needed to share your screen for this presentation. You should be able to do so, and up to you.
Okay.
Yes, you can go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Hi, guys. Good to be with you today. It's been a great week so far, and we've got a couple days to go. This morning, I'm going to share two topics with you. First one's going to be a shorter one, just an update on the 2020 Building Code public review process that happened this spring. And then we're going to tackle a second subject too, which is an update on the market transformation roadmap. That process is starting up again. And so that's quite good news, I think, for us. So as you folks might remember, there was a public review period from January 13th to March of this year of changes to the National Building Code. And all the changes in this public review are focused on stricter energy performance requirements in large buildings. And the big thing was the introduction of tiered or stepped building codes with an idea similar to the BC Energy Step Code. So they're mapping out several stages ahead of where they want to go with the code. The tiered approach is interesting because up until now, the building code has been adopted by a province, typically on a, 5-year schedule. And the code comes into effect and it's the same across the province or the territory. With the tiered approach, they're going to allow municipalities to do something different. They're going to allow a municipality to jump 1 or 2 steps ahead if they want to. And this will result in a situation where there might be progressive implementation of more strict code requirements in different parts of a province. And this has several effects, but it's a way of allowing people to go ahead of the base code on a smaller scale, which makes it easier for people to adapt to that situation on a local level. And over time, this kind of an approach has shown in British Columbia to build capacity, to build to higher levels of the code in advance of the next 5-year update. So with the tiered code, they're defining steps of performance in increments, mapping them out ahead of time so people know what those steps are. And so the idea is to try and provide a clear and the opportunity for local initiatives that would accelerate that process. So Fenestration Canada and other associations and just other interested parties across the country commented on these changes to the National Energy Code for Buildings, which is a separate document from the National Building Code that talks about energy in large buildings, and changes in Part 9, which affect small building energy performance. So the public review ended in March, and the standing committees began to review the public comments in late May. And originally, they were scheduled to complete their review by the end of June to be on schedule to publish the national code, early next year. However, there were so many responses to the public review and many requests for changes that the standing committees are still meeting. They met through June, August, September, and they're still meeting into the fall here. So the publication of the 2020 code has been postponed till December 2021. So it's been pushed a little farther out into the future. For the content of the next few slides today, I'm relying on from Jeff Baker. He's been monitoring the code committees on the issues relevant to our industry and issued a report to the associations funding his work dated on August 28th. And that's what I'm referring to here. So some of the changes relate to large buildings, and most Fenestration Canada members aren't that concerned with the large buildings, but I'll just mention these because these are proposed code changes that we replied to at Fenestration Canada as well. And so we're updating on where they're at. Proposed change 1414 was going to drastically reduce the air leakage, allowable air leakage through doors to levels even lower than the A3 level of NAFs. And this caused quite a lot of concern in the industry. There was a lot of pushback, and it looks like they've understood that it's not wise to get ahead of the industry standards for such a thing. Simply, it's just going to be hard to obtain levels of performance that are significantly beyond what our products can do today. So as of Jeff's report, as of August 28th, the Standing Committee on Energy Efficiency was going to withdraw this change. As of August 28th, that had not yet happened. Proposed change 1536 was a reduction in fenestration U values. So just 2 years ago, there was an update to the National Energy Code for buildings that implemented some reductions. And the industry felt that implementing more reductions just 2 years later was just a little bit too aggressive. So there was some opposition to that. But in the end, a compromise was reached where U factors remained unchanged for doors, but they were lowered for other products. And the Standing Committee for Energy Efficiency has accepted that compromise. The other part of that compromise was this proposed change 1541. They were proposing to reduce the fenestration and door to wall ratio. That's what the National Energy Code for buildings calls what we would think of as a window to wall ratio. It's how much fenestration you have relative to the floors. And they wanted to make some pretty significant reductions in the allowable window to wall ratios on the prescriptive path of that code. And so the Standing Committee agreed to withdraw this reduction in return for the compromise on the U values. The last two items are two proposed changes for Part 9 of the code, which introduced tiered energy prescriptive compliance requirements to Part 9. By the way, these tiered requirements were implemented in the National Energy Code for buildings. We didn't really comment on them at Fenestration Canada. I don't think people had too much concern with the concept of stepped or tiered codes in the National Energy Code for buildings. So that didn't seem to have been opposed very strongly. And I think that will be going ahead. But it's been more challenging introducing those tiered requirements in Part 9. Basically, it looks like a lot of stakeholders, especially builders, felt that they were just going too far too fast with ideas like mandatory airtightness testing and all kinds of issues around the energy modeling path. And these are issues that are still being discussed at the task groups and standing committees today. So that process is continuing, and we still don't have a complete answer on where that's at. But it looks like some form of tiered prescriptive requirements and tiered performance requirements will happen in this 2020 code, but the final form of it is not yet clear. So that's the end of that update. I wonder if anyone has any questions on that particular part of it.
We can give it a second or two to see if questions will come in. Give people a chance. So for your questions, you can always use the Q&A button or the raise hand button if you want to ask your questions directly to Al. So what we might do is we can move forward to the other topic, and
Sure.
if questions arise, we can go back. We have one in chat, I think. Yeah, so the presentation is on. So Cindy's asking if we're going to share the presentation. Yeah, this one is live on YouTube right now, and it's gonna stay there. So it's on our official channel for you to go see. Okay, I think we can proceed with the other presentation.
Great. So this is the main subject I'd like to share with you guys today is an update on this market transformation roadmap. If you've been going to Indoor over the past few years, for several years, we've been hearing from representatives of natural resources, from NRC, NRCan, not NRC, Natural Resources Canada, about their proposal for a market transformation roadmap. As you know, consultations have been held, and so we're going to update you on that. And then I'm going to, in terms of finding out where are we as an industry at on that market transformation roadmap today. It's hard to get an answer on that, but we did some analysis here in the Energy Star database in September, and I've got some interesting results to share with you from that. Which I think could be of interest to folks in our industry and even outside of our industry. So we didn't hear much from NRCan over the past year, but they've restarted. I shouldn't say restarted, it didn't go away. It's just that they are more visibly engaging with our sector and the other sectors on this process. And I'm going to share with you some slides from a presentation NRCan has given us in June to participants in the process, just letting us know what they've been doing and where, what are the next steps that are going to be starting shortly. So basically, they reviewed how did we get here, what were the drivers, what caused them to develop this market transformation roadmap, what's the process they used, and where are we going? How is this thing going to be organized and operated, from now for the next, 5, 8, or 10 years? And just to recap, for those who be new to this process or have forgotten maybe its early days, this is something that was launched in early 2017. The FPT here in the slide refers to the federal, provincial, and territorial governments. So this would be the provincial and territorial governments that are responsible for building codes in their respective provinces and territories. And collectively, they are under the Energy and Mines Ministers Conference of these provinces, I guess. And the Ministers Conference has been, a group that has been on part of the strategy for Canada to meet its climate change goals. So the prioritization exercise they did in early 2017 led them to focus on 3 equipment areas that are significantly involved in greenhouse gas emissions in residential buildings. Residential windows are a huge part of that because they account for up to 35% of home heat loss. And then the other 2 technologies are related to the heating in those. Space heating, this is the largest source of consumption, representing about half or more of the energy use in homes. And water heating is the next largest source of energy consumption in Canada's building sector. So they're tackling these 3 areas and trying to help the industry make, I guess, more rapid process than might otherwise be the case in providing more energy efficient, less carbon intensive options in these areas. And in 2017, they outlined aspirational goals over the short, medium, and long term for these three equipment areas. And they identified the need for a market transformation program to achieve them, to accelerate the development and the implementation of improved technologies. So in summer of 2019, they were working on identifying gaps and prioritizing activities that could help achieve some early wins versus long-term plans. They put together a work plan and basically putting together the infrastructure, the organization on how to implement such a market transformation program. They set up in the fall and winter of 2019. They were working on setting up an advisory committee and obtaining funding. And the idea was that, by 2020 and 2021, their work plan would be implemented. One of the things that they wanted to do was establish the lay of the land. Basically, where are we at in these three technologies today? What are the existing and planned activities that might be helpful to support a market transformation initiative? So they've been scanning existing public sources of projects, linking to roadmap initiatives, and trying to capture activities that are happening across the provinces and territories in industry and academia, and even internationally, basically to get a grasp on what's the state of the art and what's the state of implementation of the higher performance technologies in the marketplace. And just trying to get a snapshot of where things are at so that they can look at how to coordinate those activities and manage the process to achieve defined results. So the goal was to identify things that could be built upon, try to avoid duplication, identify gaps, share progress and lessons learned. And the idea was that this kind of process would be provided to implementation teams to support the market transformation process. And I believe what they were calling implementation teams are now what they're calling the experts team that we'll be talking about in a few minutes. So summary, they were at work in the spring and summer and the fall of 2019 with a view to actually getting going on actual project work in 2020. So that process seemed to stall, though, with the fall 2019 election. It basically put the process on hold along with much government work. And we haven't heard much from NRCan during this 2020 year in terms of formal activities. But during that time period, Steph had arranged a meeting, and he and I together flew out to Ottawa to meet with the officials who are in charge of this program at NRCan for some high-level discussions, just to let them know we're still involved, we're still interested, and still want to be, included in what they're doing. In June, they actually had one of their, Kimberly Curran, who is Chief of Standards Development at NRCan, spoke about pros and cons of regulation. So they've spoken at our conference, they've spoken at the NBC conference and possibly others here in Canada. And most recently in August 11th, in fact, they held a webinar meeting of people involved that had been previously contacted about being involved in this market transformation process to basically announce that, we're back on track, we're in business. They've reorganized a little bit how they're approaching this thing, but we are now going to restart this process of consultations and work. And when I say we, they are launching this process, they are managing this process Of course, they're inviting industry to be involved. And so we, as Fenestration Canada, are involved as one of the representatives of the fenestration industry in this process. So at this August webinar, they've announced they have a staff member appointed specifically to be a project coordinator and be the primary point of contact for the expert teams and co-chairs. Ashley is, sets up the meetings and has set up an infrastructure based on Microsoft Teams to allow for communication and information sharing and all that kind of stuff. So that's, definitely going to, and we've already had a few meetings. So we see that that's really helping to move us ahead. They've compiled a first version of this lay of the land document. And to this point, they had identified some 180 programs across Canada involved in various ways with space heating, water heating, and windows, and initiatives, and you might say everything from incentive programs at a provincial or local level to research projects related to it. They're trying to capture in that database. There's still a ways to go there, I think, but basically it's one way that they want to keep track on the progress of the industry. They also reviewed the typical market transformation process. If there's a new technology, for example, it takes time for it to make its way into the marketplace. Often the new technologies will slowly be adopted over time. But if you want to accelerate that process from research and development to implementation in codes and standards, then, there's a number of steps that are typically followed in this kind of a situation from product development and early testing to demonstration projects to increase industry and consumer awareness, identify issues that arise and try to resolve them, information and awareness, marketing and education, labeling programs. For example, Energy Star program plays a role here with labeling of energy efficient windows, marketing of energy efficient windows, defined testing and certification procedures to qualify the products, and then on to training, incentives that might expand the use of these products. And when there is once there is sufficient penetration of these higher performance technologies and they're becoming more and more widely used in the marketplace, then they finally, codes and standards then begin to adopt that level of performance. So they gave us an update on the various sectors at this session. For Windows, they had announced, of course, that the new Energy Star specification came into effect on January 1st, 2020. It's a more aggressive spec than we had previously. There are no longer 3 zones. It's just 1 zone across the country with a pretty aggressive U factor. And they've also initiated discussions with industry associations, the AVFQ, NBC, and Fenestration Canada. And then they described to us the new governance structure. And so what we have at the bottom are these 3 expert teams, which report to the Roadmap Advisory Council. And then the Roadmap Advisory Council reports higher up to the Federal, Provincial, and Territorial Steering Committee. Of these equipment expert teams, the purpose of the teams is to provide technical input and assessments of existing activities that support the roadmap and provide a forum for sharing and identifying new activities related to research, development, and employment. Basically, we can summarize that in 3 points. The expert teams provide technical input and assessment of existing activities. They will provide a forum for sharing and identifying new activities related to research, development, and deployment. And 3, to identify barriers that are preventing progress so that NRCan and the government could maybe invest in doing something to remove those barriers. So the co-chairs of the 3 expert teams were named at this meeting. And I've been appointed co-chair of the Windows expert team. Together with my co-chair from the government side is Rob Singlehurst. It's my understanding that the co-chair positions are going to rotate. So, once you're a co-chair on this committee, doesn't mean I'll be there forever or Rob will be there forever. But the idea is, these are the teams we're starting with at the moment. At this point, Jeff Baker is also participating. He was the co-chair last year, and possibly from the time they started this process, when he was the consultant for Fenestration Canada, and when Jeff stepped into a new role, sort of stepping away from that active role for Fenestration Canada, I guess I've been put into that place. And I'm happy to be there. So they also announced some next steps at this update. One was to hold regional workshops across the country, up to 6 regional workshops, locations to be determined. They think they will involve experts and representatives from levels of government, industry, academia, efficiency organizations, and so on. The workshops could help to inform development of regional blueprints, and potentially regional policies, regional specific requirements, highlighting best practices, success stories and challenges, highlight potentials for future regional and national collaboration. So I think we can look forward to these kind of workshops. I believe they're going to be held over 2 years. So I expect there's going to be a Western, a Central Canada, and Eastern Canada workshops would probably be likely. And the topics discussed at these regional workshops would be reflect regionally specific circumstances, opportunities, and challenges related to these roadmap areas. The other thing is that they want to develop an annual progress report on how these 3 sectors are actually progressing, So NRCan is looking for these expert teams to start the conversation with this fall. And we finalized the list of the Windows expert team just last week. Invitations were sent out on the weekend, and I think most people have already, that were invited to the expert teams, have agreed to participate. We wanted to keep the expert team to a manageable size. At this point, we have about 20 people, which doesn't sound that manageable, but we did want to have enough representation to capture some regional issues and all different areas of expertise and different sectors. So, and of course, the role of these teams: identify barriers and opportunities, report on progress to the Roadmap Advisory Council. These expert teams are going to be able to help to inform the process by people with deep experience in our industry. The decisions, so it's not just going to be 2 or 3 people that are making decisions for the industry here. The expert teams are meant to capture that broader group and broader range of viewpoints to help to inform the process. So we're hoping to hold our first experts team meeting the week of October 12th, coming up pretty soon. And then the next advisory council, that's the group our expert teams report to, are going to be meeting on October 21st. So basically the process, the process is now moving forward, and I think you can expect to hear more about this, through the coming year. So because it's really important to get a handle on where we're at this time in the industry. The lay of the land is looking at things on the research and development side in academia. They're looking at available incentive programs that are helping to make some of these new products and technologies more affordable, um, or through incentives and other measures. Um, I thought it was good for us to, as an association, to get a handle on where we are at collectively today. And I thought one way of doing that might be to dig into the Energy Star database and see what we can learn about the work our industry has already done in terms of higher performing products. At Windor 2018, the progress of the window industry towards reaching these market transformation goals was presented with reference to the August Energy and Mines Ministers Conference report. And they used this kind of a scorecard approach for residential windows, space heating, and water heating, basically to look at the proposed market transformation goals, where we are today, where we want to be in 2025, where we want to be in 2030, and basically evaluate for each of those three zones, according to the criteria of a market transformation program: availability, accessibility, awareness, affordability, acceptance. Does the technology exist? Does the market have access to it? Does the market know about it? Is it affordable? Is it acceptable to end users? I'm going to show you how they scored it in 2018, and I wonder what you think about the scoring. So windows at a U factor of 1.6, all green lights. Yes, we can do it. We know about it. It's what we do every day. It's not a problem. The next level up is where they wanted residential windows to be in 2025. And that would be at a U factor of 1.2. And that would be essentially the level of Energy Star today is at 1.22 in metric units. So does the technology exist? Green light. Does the market have access to the technology? Green light, yes. Does the market know about the technology? Yellow light, to some extent. So they felt that there was maybe some uncertainty, that maybe people didn't know how to get to 1.2 in window designs. Is the technology affordable? To some extent. Is the acceptance, form, fit, and function acceptable? Yes. I think most of us probably know that at the Energy Star level today, most products, some products can, some double glazed products are qualifying under the ER path, and there might be a couple of double glazed products on the U value path, but for most products, it looks like it's a triple glazed world at 1.2. When I looked in the database, there were very few double glazed products. The majority were triple pane, and that suggests to us that, triple pane is kind of what most people are using to achieve a U factor of 1.2. So the question about, do we know about it? I think we do. I think that this yellow light should probably become green. Is it affordable? Well, it's more expensive than a double glazed window, so it may not be considered affordable today. And then they looked at where they thought we were at with respect to their 2030 aspirational goal, which was a window U factor of 0.8. And so they felt that there were some real serious questions here. Does the technology exist? Well, to some extent, there was uncertainty. Does the market have access to the technology? Well, to some extent. Does the market know about the technology? No. Is the technology affordable? Is the form, fit, and function of the technology acceptable? Well, to some extent. So basically, they felt there was a lot of uncertainty about our industry's ability to reach that performance level. And I wonder what you folks think about that. Feel free to offer your comments, but basically, I'm just asking you to think about that. I was wondering this myself. My hunch was that were farther along than this scorecard would show, but just where are we at on the roadmap today? Does this scorecard fairly represent the capabilities of our industry and its state of readiness to meet the 2030 U-value goals? So we looked at the most recent version of the Energy Star database as of August 27th, and that was the 2020 June 5th version of the database. And we did some data analysis on the products in the database, basically focusing on the most efficient product category, which is closest to the market transformation goals. And we filtered and summarized the files to see what we could learn about the highest performing products in the database. And I wasn't sure what to expect myself when I undertook this process, and that's what led me to explore this. So the Energy Star program has defined the most efficient category of product at a U value of USI 1.05 UIP in inch-pound units of 0.18. So in order to get into this category on the U value path, that's the U value you would need to have. So I filtered products that were at this category or lower, and this is the range of U factors that I found. And then we looked at trying to identify the number of unique product lines by considering the manufacturer, the operating type, and the frame material, and broke it down by the U values that were in the database. And the aspirational goal for 2030 was defined at 0.8, or which would correspond to a UIP of 0.14. But we found that there were products in the database with U factors even lower than that. So that was pretty interesting. So in the next couple of slides, I'm just going to summarize what I found. I found this interesting, and I thought it would be interesting to you, our members, also to see, to sort of have a summarized version of what's in the database. In total, the Energy Star database as of June had 366,000 records. A record would be each individual product, a manufacturer, a specific operating type, a specific frame material, and even a specific glass option. So there are thousands of records there. You might have a single product line with anywhere from 2 to 50 to 150 individual records, just identifying every little glass option with their grids and shading coefficients and all that stuff you know about. If we filter that database to show only the most efficient products, we got about 143,000 or 39% of the total records. And if we restrict the analysis to most efficient by U value, we're at about 35% of all records. So that was interesting. Why I'm restricting it by U value is that the tiered code proposals that we saw in the spring public review, there's no energy rating involved. All of the future step code or tiered code options are going to be done on the basis of U value. And when energy modeling is required, they're going to consider U value and solar heat gain. There will not be any energy rating in the future code. So given that the future is not going to be using energy rating in the codes, I've excluded products that qualified only on the basis of energy rating for this analysis. If we look at the total number of manufacturers, there are 358 manufacturers identified in the database. The most efficient, if you filter them by most efficient, there's 282. And if it's most efficient by U value only, that brought it down to 270 manufacturers. But that basically amounts to 3/4, 75% of all of the manufacturers in the database. So a significant proportion of the manufacturers in Canada are represented in this database. In one of our calls a few weeks ago, I was wondering if anyone had a handle on how many manufacturers there are in Canada. And some people who know more than I do suggested that there's probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 350 to 400. If the number is 400, then then it looks like up to 3/4, I guess 75% of 350 anyway, are in the database. So that shows significant participation by art manufacturers today, you guys, with products at the most efficient level or better. That was an interesting finding. If we break down the data by U-value, and by the way, we're going to look at 3 more slides. Here I'm looking at the distribution of U-values. The next slide is going to look at the breakdown by frame operating type. And the third slide will look at the breakdown by frame material. So this is interesting. If we look at a U factor of 0.15, we had 255 manufacturers with 730 distinct product lines. This is excluding the glass options within those product lines, just looking at product lines, 730 product lines representing 94% of the manufacturers at this level. If we look at U factor at the next step down, if we look at these inch-pound units as increments, from 0.18, if we go to 0.17, we've got 216 manufacturers, 573 product lines, 80% of manufacturers represented at this level. If we go to 0.16, 64% of the manufacturers, 172 of them have products at this level. If we look at 0.88, half the manufacturers in the database have products at 0.88 or 0.15. If we look at the aspirational goal, we're down now to about 84 manufacturers. That would represent about 31% of the Energy Star most efficient manufacturers have products at this performance level. So this is interesting to me because this is the aspirational goal for 2020. This is the goal that they thought we didn't even know we could get there. We didn't have the glass products to do it. There was uncertainty about whether the technology existed. And we find that 31% of the manufacturers offering Energy Star most efficient products have products at this performance level. And there's 109 product lines from 84 of them. So, and then it just trails off from there. So I thought that was a very interesting finding. If we look at it by operating type, we've got the U values down the left column, and we have the operating types across the table here. You can see that at the gateway level, USI 1.05 or 1.18 inch-pounds, we have hundreds of product lines, awning product lines, hundreds of casement product lines. We've got double hungs, double sliders. We've got single hungs, some single sliders. Essentially, we have every product type in the Energy Star database has products at that level. And as the U values get lower, you see that there are fewer and fewer products in each of these categories. But again, it's just interesting to see how many types of products we have at these performance levels. And looking at the colored bars at the top here, it's interesting to see that we have almost as many products at the 0.99 U factor as we do at the 1.05 U factor. And of course, as we get down to 0.82, there's quite, there's less and less of them. But the reality is that there are still products already in the database at the level of performance that they are considering to be the aspirational goal for 2030. And if we look at the breakdown by frame materials, here we have the various styles or operating types in this column. Here we have the number of brands or number of manufacturers offering that type of product. And then here's the breakdown in terms of frame materials for each of these product types. So for example, in awning windows, there are 15 product lines that are aluminum vinyl, 2 aluminum wood, 2 cellular PVC, 1 composite, 5 fiberglass, 140 vinyl, 2 vinyl clad metal, 5 vinyl clad wood, 7 wood, metal clad wood. You get the idea. Basically, we're seeing a broad number. All the frame materials are represented to some extent in this database. Clearly, vinyl, is the main frame material we see in the industry today, and we have most representation there. But all frame materials are represented at the most efficient level. So I think that's interesting to see this. We have significant participation by manufacturers. We have all the frame materials represented at the Energy Star most efficient level. I haven't done this breakdown by U value, but when we looked at all the operating types are represented. And when it comes to the aspirational goal, most operating types are represented, not all of them at this performance level. But if we just go a little bit higher to somewhere around 0.93 or 0.99, we see, wider representation in all product types. So this was interesting. To my mind, this is the kind of information that is useful in understanding the lay of the land in our industry. What is it that we're capable of today? And what should be the 2030 goal? And really it's kind of an open question right now. From the material I've seen from NRCan with respect to this market transformation program, I believe they're giving themselves until 2022 to decide on what the final target, aspirational target may be. So they've given themselves some wiggle room to adjust it to something that is achievable. And I think what we're seeing in the products that are already developed and offered, qualified through Energy Star, these are products that manufacturers have spent a lot of money developing and qualifying, doing the energy modeling, reporting, and uploading into this database. I think this gives us probably the best sense that there is as to where we're at and what we can do. And I think this kind of analysis, if we can update this kind of snapshot over the next year or two, there might be grounds for proposing or having reasonable discussions with NRCan about where that 2030 aspirational goal should be for something that is achievable, affordable, something that will actually allow the scorecard. If you're going to want to have green rows on that scorecard for the 2030 goal, then there might be a need to adjust the target to something that is achievable by industry today. So that was something that I found really, and I hope you folks found it interesting too. And I wonder if there's any questions or opinions or thoughts about the NRCan market transformation process and about this deep dive into the Energy Star database and what it tells us.
So as of now, we didn't get questions along the way. Let's give it a couple seconds here if there's any clarification that we would need to bring.
I think this is helpful to people that feel that I think there's legitimate fear in the industry that the government is going to force manufacturers to build products that nobody's going to want to buy, that are going to be expensive and you know, and I think that that fear might be, I can see why it's there, but I think we may find that it's not going to turn out that way. And one of the things we're seeing with the step code approach in British Columbia is that as municipalities have jumped ahead of the base code, we're finding that that's starting to create a market for higher performing products. In the British Columbia step code, every step above step 2, for example, buildings at step 3 or 4 require every building to have a HOT 2000 energy model. And what they're finding is that using triple pane windows saves a contractor money in buying and building a step 3 house. That actually, the more expensive triple pane windows actually allow the contractor to save money in other parts of the enclosure or the mechanical system that are more expensive. And that changes the value proposition completely. Today, if you're a builder in Ontario, why would you want to put in triple pane windows? It's just not something that people see as critically valuable. But go 5 years from now, under a tiered code, under the prescriptive or the performance path of that tiered code, the triple glazed window level of performance is going to be a real advantage to the builder. It's actually going to be part of an affordable way to build at that higher tier. And that's going to start changing the whole evaluation of whether the triple glazed technology is affordable or not. So we're going to see that coming, in the coming years as this tiered code is implemented. So I think what we know of our market today tells us these products are expensive and they're in the database, but who's buying them? Buying our triple glazed windows or not? Sorry, they're buying our double glazed windows. They're not buying our most efficient product. That may be the perception, but that whole equation could change with the implementation of the tiered codes and energy performance modeling that changes that value proposition significantly.
Good. So I don't think we got more questions. So what we'll do, we can move forward to the other presentation at 12. If anyone has a question or a comment about what you presented now, I guess they can email you anytime.
Yeah, certainly. Let me know your thoughts if you, or give me a call if you have questions. But I'm sharing this with at each, and so we're going to have pretty much everybody will be exposed to to this analysis. And when I mentioned that I had been doing this kind of analysis at our meeting, or at this last meeting we had with the NRCan folks, NRCan said, well, listen, we own Energy Star. We'll just get the folks at Energy Star to develop this into a report, a standard report that they can generate from the Energy Star database. So, I think that's a great idea where basically they can, as part of their lay of the land exercise, they could be providing an update on this kind of analysis with every time the Energy Star database gets updated potentially. And this is something that could be made available to, to our industry as well to help us understand, how this is changing over time. And I think that kind of data will inform the conversation. And I think it will lead to a situation where I'm reasonably confident that our industry will not be forced into building products that nobody wants. I think the process is going to be gentler, and that with the introduction of tiered codes, with the introduction of other government incentives. There are other, the government is, my understanding is they are going to want to put some funding into removing roadblocks and obstacles. And so there might be incentive money, there might be other kinds of funding programs that help to facilitate manufacturers retooling to be able to offer product lines they don't have today, in addition to just signals from the marketplace. So basically, I think this is a process that it's not so much one that we need to fear. The government wants a win here; they don't want a loss. Yeah. And so I think that an informed process that involves members of our industry and thoughtful people on the other side, could make this transformation less scary than it might look at this time.
Yeah. Okay, so good. So I'll thank our sponsors, VECA, for being the presenting sponsor of the Regional Week, and Everlast as gold sponsor. And we'll see you at 12 today with Manufacturer Spotlight. We're gonna talk about Everlast. So Vince Porcelli from Everlast is going to be our guest for a special show of fenestration in Canada with Pat Flannery. So see you there. And also this afternoon, we have another presentation by you, Al. Maybe you could give us just a little bit of what it's going to be, just to see for those on the line who would like to participate.
Yes. What I'm going to share with you this afternoon is a presentation designed to help building officials and manufacturers have a better understanding of the window performance labels that are required on products, and so it's called Window Performance Testing and Labeling in Canada, and it came out of a discussion from the Atlantic Regional Committee. They felt that we needed some kind of a document that simplifies what NAFS is all about. On the East Coast, their challenge is everybody knows about energy performance, and a lot of people think that as long as you got an Energy Star sticker on your window, you're code compliant. Of course, the new level of Energy Star performance is going to mean fewer windows have those Energy Star labels, but they felt there was just not enough awareness of the requirement for NAFS testing and qualification. So I thought I would work on a presentation that would kind of help everyone understand what's involved in product testing and labeling to qualify windows under the building code. And so I thought I would make a short, compact presentation and keep it simple. And as I was working on it, I thought, you can't make it too simple, because then people just don't do enough because they don't understand what's involved. So I've tried to make it simple and clear, but it's not as short as I would be. However, this is my sort of beta version. You guys will be my beta testers for this presentation. And it's something that could end up as a potential educational resource that Fenestration Canada uses in various settings. And I'll talk more about that when I give you that presentation this afternoon.
Okay, great. So see you all back at 12 and see you this afternoon at 1:30, Al.
Okay, great.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
You bet. Bye.